injustices that were happening. And a lot of that came through through oral history, through sharing of family stories. And many of those stories were about my great uncle, Nuri. So Nuri Rufael Kotani is my great uncle, who I also talk about in this book, and is how I got connected to Alba. So as a kid, I always heard about my crazy great uncle who had like a whole list of fake names because he was always fleeing the authorities, or he was always in jail, and he even had a tattoo. Like, that's how crazy he was. He had a tattoo. And the tattoo was actually the International Brigade's tattoo. And in the 1930s, in the early 1930s, he got a government scholarship to leave Iraq to study at MIT in railway engineering. And while he was in Cambridge in the 1930s, he was so excited about the kind of the activism that was happening in that area during the Great Depression that he lost his government scholarship and he got kicked out of MIT. And then he was sent back to Iraq. And while he went back to Iraq, he created an organization called the Association Against Imperialism and Fascism. Like, who wouldn't join that now? Like, that is an amazing, amazing group. He went to fight in all these different causes. He went to fight for Palestine's independence against British rule, all these different kind of freedom fighting causes. And then in the 1930s, mid-1930s, him and one other Iraqi, an Iraqi Jew, a friend of his, found themselves traveling to Spain to fight in the Spanish Civil War. And because of his time at MIT, or because he knew English, I have no idea why, but he was put in with the Abraham Lincoln Brigades. He fought alongside the Americans in this quintessential fight for freedom. He fought in the Battle of Ebro, one of the first kind of battles of World War II. And during the writing of this book, we finally were able to get his full file from the Spanish Civil War using one of his fake names, because he didn't want to use one of his real names. And so like growing up and learning more about my great uncle, like here was this guy, and it wasn't about like country, and it wasn't about race, and it wasn't about religion, but it was about freedom and justice. Here's a guy who risked his life, literally risked his life to do the right thing. So that was kind of the milieu and the value system of how I grew up. How I probably was pushed into a field of medicine and pediatrics, a very service-driven profession, and how I ended up in Flint, and how when this crisis happened, I was able to really do what I did without even seeing an alternative to that decision.
And your great uncle fought alongside around 100 Michiganders.